We talk about Steve Bisciotti's comments, Bobby Wagner, John Harbaugh, and more with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. Back here on a Thursday episode with our Friday guest, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. Qadry, this week, it feels like the Bobby Wagner situation has played out for a little bit. Still no word as of the time of this recording. We'll talk about that in the second segment. We have comments to talk about from John Harbaugh. Steve Bisciotti, how you doing today?
Doing wonderful. A lot of busy back and forth going on from the owners' meeting. A lot as far as the league in general. And, wow, where are the Cleveland Browns? They just keep on winning this offseason championship. I don't understand how they do it, but so be it.
Yep, again, it's like clockwork every offseason. We thought they were kind of stepping back a little bit from that championship, but here they are to claim it again, sending 6 picks for Deshaun Watson. And we'll talk a bit about what Steve Bisciotti had to say about Deshaun Watson in a second here. But Bisciotti did talk to a small pool of reporters and talked a bit about Lamar Jackson's contract situation and kind of said about the quarterback position, like he wants to have a star at quarterback. But in terms of the contract, ended up saying that it can't be Eric DeCosta calling continuously when Lamar Jackson wants to call. That's something that they'll work with. When do you feel like is the right time for Jackson? Because it seems like from all the comments we've heard from John Harbaugh, from Bisciotti himself, that the Ravens want to get this thing done, but Jackson's on a bit of a different time frame there and might want to wait a little bit, and it feels like he could wait out this year. Bisciotti seems like 2022 might not be the year that he signs this. So do you feel like the time is right now for Jackson to secure this long-term extension, or do you think it's smart for him to wait, maybe play on a couple franchise tags and see what happens?
I can't get into the mind of Lamar. And what I mean by this, are you saying you are betting on yourself and you really feel like you're in a great position to break the bank and do something extraordinary contract-wise? Are you in the mindset of, well, I'm not going to push it. I want to see what they do when it comes to free agency and then, plan, I guess, if in fact you're talking about the franchise tag and what does that mean? Or, a Deshaun Watson scenario came about. Obviously, we saw Patrick Mahomes. We saw Allen and when he signed. And, for Josh Allen's, I thought it was comparable to what maybe Lamar would be getting. But yeah, new money, new salary cap, new leverage. And so it seems that Lamar is playing this leverage game. We just don't know, the full backing of why he's doing it and the patience or, I guess, gamesmanship that his side is playing. Because remember, this isn't the typical agent, consultation. This is he and his mom, and that's it. They're sitting down and they're making sure that, they figure out what the deal is and try to hammer things out. So it is very unusual as far as the communication between Lamar and Eric, because here's the thing people don't realize. When you negotiate a contract, if I am negotiating on your behalf and now, I go to management and say, hey, Kevin, man, he's been killing it. Here's his numbers. Here's his stats. Well, the management is going to come back and be like, yeah, no, we appreciate all that. But, Kevin does have, black hair. Oh, well, that backdrop, hey, that palm tree hasn't grown in a minute. Yeah, that picture, it looks like he's SpongeBob SquarePants, in the background. And you're like, what? What does any of that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with it. It has everything to do with the fact that they're trying to belittle your side of things. Well, if you, Kevin, went in and negotiated, you're knowing that, hey, again, I come in and I've shown up every week. I've produced. I've shown you what I can do. Well, I can't be, if I'm management, can't be coming at you with this idea of you got a SpongeBob SquarePants backdrop, because then that's going to insult you. You get insulted. Now you're going to be feeling some type of way, and the relationship is going to be fractured. So they have to walk with kid gloves, if you will, when it comes to the delicate talking points to Lamar and his agent / mom, and figure out like what's the balance act so they don't say the wrong thing that will, alienate their franchise guy.
Right. I love the casual roast here of me. I love the SpongeBob SquarePants background reference, and that palm tree. It might grow one day. You never know. It might sprout up one day. But it feels like
Get some coconuts on it.
yeah, exactly. I gotta get a little coconuts in there. But it feels like part of this whole thing with Jackson could just be the fact that granted the end of his 2021 season was not, I think, where he wanted it to be with the injury and everything. And you're right, we can't get in the mind of Lamar Jackson. We don't know what he is thinking. What we do know is he tweeted out yesterday that he loves the Ravens. He said, what's this false narrative? But it feels like he might just want to try to play his value up a little bit, because admittedly, if he does go deep in the playoffs, win a Super Bowl, let's say, like Joe Flacco did in his contract year, that gets him a lot of money. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But Steve Bisciotti also talked a bit about Deshaun Watson and the fully guaranteed deal that he got, and said the implications of this across not just for the Ravens but other teams that are waiting to pay young signal callers, it could be huge. So from your perspective, Q, how big was that contract that the Browns gave Deshaun Watson from a league perspective in terms of these teams that now might have to shell out similar contracts because of what the Browns did there?
I think anytime from a player's perspective, you get what I call like life-altering funds and money and all that. The leverage game for the next guy goes in his favor. But unlike NBA or Major League Baseball, the owners ultimately had, the ultimate leverage, because what winds up happening is this. I can backload it, and that player is never truly going to see that money. Well, if you guarantee the entire thing, fully guaranteeing the contract, then you're locked in. You're ready to talk about how and what and where, and we ain't cutting you, we ain't releasing. Let's do this, the whole nine. So I think those are some groundbreaking issues that other sports leagues have kind of looked at the NFL Players Association sideways with, because you hadn't had a chance to really exploit the guaranteed money portion. So now you do. And kudos to Deshaun Watson and his team for making it happen, and them going out there and feeling like, what, we're going to do what we're going to do, and doing what we're going to do, meaning that they got it fully guaranteed. So that's good. That's negotiation that, I wouldn't have expected. But I think, for Steve Bisciotti, his mind says like, dang it, it makes things a lot more challenging for the rest of the league. And in particular, the fact that he has a quarterback that is on equal footing of Deshaun Watson. So, there's going to be some definite gamesmanship, if you will.
Right. And honestly, going back to what you were talking about with Josh Allen a couple minutes ago, me personally, Q, I was a little surprised that Allen was actually the first quarterback to sign out of that class. I thought it would have been Jackson, and, credit to Allen and his team for getting the deal done. But, the way that the quarterback market has shifted over the last couple of weeks with Watson and Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, you're right. Every time another quarterback signs, the price, it goes up. And it feels like with the salary cap increasing every season. Now, obviously, COVID, the cap went down a little bit, but now you're back with the TV revenue. You're back with the cap going up a little bit. these franchise salaries will continue to go up. The yearly salaries will continue to go up. So Jackson, I think if he's playing it that way, he deserves every penny of an extension that he gets. But now that Watson has this contract in hand, $230 million guaranteed, it is going to change the way that negotiations happen. And it's going to be interesting to see what the domino effect is throughout the league there. But we'll head into our first break. Now, when we get back, we'll be diving into the Bobby Wagner situation that at this point has not been resolved yet. So be sure to stay tuned. So a little time to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, let me tell you a bit about BetOnline. And after months of playing, college basketball now has determined the top teams for the Final Four, and they'll determine the national champion this coming week. I'm out, Gonzaga in Illinois. It was a good short run for me, but it is over for my March Madness bracket. But that doesn't mean you can't bet on betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. It's not just basketball either. BetOnline, it's your continued source for all your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So be sure to head to the website. Use your phone to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And thank you again for making Locked On Ravens your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Q, it seems like we've been talking about Bobby Wagner for a little bit now. The veteran has been released by Seattle, and he's been scavenging the market a little bit, trying to find his next NFL team. It seems like, unless there's another mystery team we don't know about at this point, it's coming down to the Ravens and the Rams. Josina Anderson of USA Today reporting that the Ravens feel like they've submitted a very competitive offer for Wagner. And it seems like what the stories have been is that Wagner's looking for around a 1-year, $11 million contract. And these 1-year deals for veterans, for teams like the Ravens, can get a bit tricky. Usually what the Ravens like to do is they like to spread that cap hit out over a couple of years, kind of backload that contract so that maybe a 3-year deal turns into a 2-year deal. You can get out of it after the third year, or a 2-year deal turns into a 1-year deal, etc. But Q, this might be an exception for the Ravens because it feels like with Jackson seemingly either signing an extension or playing on a massive franchise tag number in 2023, depending on which it is. I don't feel like he would not be on the Ravens in 2023, although, crazy things happen in the NFL. But I feel like this could be an opportunity for the Ravens to potentially go all in, not necessarily by trading draft capital, but maybe committing a bit of money to a Bobby Wagner more than you would expect. Do you think like this is the year, Q, that maybe if the price point is just a little bit off, you would maybe give Wagner a little bit more money because he's that good of a player?
The salary cap is going to go up. You're going to get more cash. What are we talking about here? Like, you need him. And we haven't seen the likes of a guy that veteran awesomeness since Darryl Smith at middle linebacker. CJ Mosley was groomed by him, and although there were parts of CJ's game that I was somewhat disappointed in, but still was a good linebacker. Obviously, he got paid, went to the Jets, but Darryl Smith was the guy. I liked the way he played. He was smart. He was always in position and made plays. I think Bobby Wagner is a step above him, but that's something where, yeah, if the numbers say we got to pay him a nickel more, then let's not be chinchy about it. Let's get it done.
Right, and there still are other needs the Ravens can address. Like the edge rusher obviously was one with Qadry Smith not coming in at the end of the day. You got cornerback where not a lot of bodies there outside of Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, but inside linebacker is still a need. Josh Bynes is a free agent right now. LJ Ford is a free agent right now. John Harbaugh said that Malik Harrison is going to be cross-training to be a Sam linebacker. So obviously with Tyus Bowser having his torn Achilles, they need bodies there as well. So I think Wagner next to Patrick Queen, that duo would be amazing. And how big would it be for Patrick Queen, Q, if Bobby Wagner were to come in here? We saw the transformation with Josh Bynes. I feel like with Bobby Wagner, you could take that to the next level.
You can. And here's the thing. So there's nuances to everything that we do. And, for Bobby, there was a reason why he was on the team for so long. And he was, the last of the defenders to be on the Legion of Boom. I think part of his appeal is his leadership. Part of his appeal is, knowing the game and putting guys in good position. So, you make plays, guys respect you. You make plays, you go to the Pro Bowl, guys like, wow, you get another rung up. When I look at Bobby Wagner and the way he's been able to sustain his play and the way in which he studies the game and not being out of position, it's a no-brainer. You bring him in, you're going to have a young linebacking core, but even a defense as a whole is going to kind of be new, if you will. And McDonald can lean upon a player the caliber of Wagner to get guys right when things might not seem like they're in a good position. So you need those set of eyes on the field, and I think he provides those set of eyes for the defense to function.
Yeah, and I know one of the concerns with maybe committing a lot of money to Bobby Wagner is some people feel like the inside linebacker position is almost dying a little bit with the hybrid safeties coming in and playing, like Chuck Clark, for example, playing a dime linebacker. Do you need two inside linebackers on the field? Where are the snaps coming? I feel like for a player like Bobby Wagner, you're going to find the snaps for a player like that because he is that good. But do you feel like the inside linebacker position is one that's maybe going the wayside because teams like to play with more defensive backs on the field now in favor of that position?
I don't necessarily think so. I think it depends on the coach. I think you're always going to have, that leader on your team, and who is that leader that you would look to? You're going to have that second level player, that linebacker. Now, is the speed or the demand from a size standpoint, movement standpoint, has it changed? Possibly. You don't want a big lugging linebacker when you got a guy like Mark Andrews with his size and his mobility going down the field, matching up one-on-one with him. Obviously, Travis Kelce as well comes to mind. A couple of the upper tier, tight end type receiver, tight ends. You want to have a guy that can cover, but also that this game, especially late in the year, gets really physical, and physicality means running the ball. And you don't want offensive linemen just swallowing guys up because they can. You want to be able to shed those guys and get to the ball carrier. So I don't think anytime soon the linebacker position is going to be lessened or diminished.
Right. I tend to agree with you, Q, and you're right. It does depend on the coach and the defense that teams play with, but you can use dime linebackers and still have an inside linebacker on the field. And so it gives the Ravens an opportunity if they do have Queen and Wagner. Let's say the Ravens used to have those three cornerback rooms where it was Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, or Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Carr, Jimmy Smith. And they would use guys and they would rest guys and they would have a rotation. And that kept them well rested into the fourth quarter. And so while other defenses, the receivers were out there playing 90, 95% of snaps, the cornerbacks were like, hey, I've played like 70% of snaps. I'm feeling good right now. So for the inside linebacker position, if you use a dime backer there and you want to have a rotation with Wagner and Queen, I'm not necessarily saying take Wagner off the field because he's, again, that good of an inside linebacker. But another reason there why I don't think the position would necessarily die out on this Ravens defense, because they like to have the versatility. They like to move guys all around, but that doesn't mean they're not going to use the players that they have. And I think Wagner and Queen would still make a very solid duo at that position. But Q, we talked a bit about maybe overspending in this offseason because of what's coming up contractually with the Ravens with a couple of guys. But are there any other defensive free agents that you would maybe break the bank a little for, like this Jadeveon Clowney ring any bells for you, Stephon Gilmore? Is this really a Bobby Wagner or bust situation? And then after that, you're really looking for other bargain free agents?
Yeah, I think it's Bobby or bust. I don't see anybody that really splashes out. I know Jadeveon Clowney, when he came out, he looked apart. I think his injury history comes into play. The way in which he's utilized and really didn't get much. He's a good run stopper to a certain degree, but the impact plays, really didn't see that many impact plays from him. I'm loving Stephon Gilmore, but give me a more aggressive go at Bobby before Stephon. I think he could play. Don't get me wrong. I think he is phenomenal corner. You always need corners, but last I checked, you got two guys that you're paying significant dollars to, And although they're coming off major injuries, but they should be back healthy. So, yeah, if that went, if they got him, I wouldn't be mad. It just will be, what does the deal look like? That sort of thing. I think that's where they're like, if he can get the money elsewhere, go get it. But if he wants to talk and figure it out, then we're open and willing to at least kick the tires and see what lands.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to Clowney or Gilmore whatsoever. I just feel like for me, Wagner is the guy. Like, it is Bobby or bust for me as well. And I think it's that because the Ravens pretty much downplayed the idea of adding a center in free agency. So it would have been J.C. Tretter. I would have said, go out there and get J.C. Tretter. But from what John Harbaugh had to say to the media on Monday, it feels pretty unlikely that that train is going to be moving any forward. And we'll talk about what John Harbaugh had to say to the media in the final segment here. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Built Bar New Year's resolutions. People give up on them all the time, but don't do that this year, especially if yours is to eat right. Do it with Built Bar. And it really doesn't feel like a resolution because people actually really enjoy eating them. And they have these really cool things called Built Bar Puffs. They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallows, so they're fluffy and marshmallowy. Those Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. You can actually go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, and really you'll be blown away by all the numbers here. They're low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these also, and there are a ton of great flavors. Mint brownie, my personal favorite, but you also have coconut almond, etc. So be sure to go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. We're back, our final segment here of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And again, thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to check out Locked On NFL Draft with Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy as they bring these next draft prospects to life on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. So be sure to check that out. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. But John Harbaugh had a lot to say to the media on Monday, talking about a bunch of different topics. And I wanted to talk about a few with you here today, get your thoughts on how this went, because one of the big things that, I kind of left off the second segment with was the fact that he said that the Ravens, it feels unlikely that they will go after a free agent center and that they're probably going to roll with Passion McCary at the position, maybe add another in the draft, but that they feel confident in those guys there. Now, McCary, I think gets a bit of a bad rep because of what happened in Buffalo with the bad snap that ended up causing a Lamar Jackson concussion, which is serious. You can't have bad snaps in this league. It can't happen. In that 2020 season with Skura and McCary, it was just, it was brutal. But Tretter's on the market. J.C. Tretter, Bradley Bozeman walks to Carolina. Do you feel like Passion McCary's best role for this team is at center if he's a starter? Or do you feel like they should maybe try to find somebody else and then have Passion McCary be that super six man?
I can totally see where John Harbaugh is coming from. You need your different role players, and you always want to make sure you're, how do I say this? Just because the pretty girl's outside, that doesn't mean you have an ugly girl, sitting there chilling with you. You're so quick to look elsewhere and you forget, what you got as what it comes to your team. I see people talking a lot about, obviously in this particular case, McCary, but you're also talking about, different receivers and, it'd be a great idea for, John Harbaugh and them because of the draft being, what it is to get a receiver and a whole 9 yards. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I understand, but I also like how John is like, yeah, but we got guys already. Guys need to be on the same page. A lot of that has to do with the line. A lot of that has to do with Lamar. And a lot of that has to do with the receivers and the work that is put forth. We always are looking at this shiny new, ooh, look at that over there. And forgetting that, what do you have? So, it's a good problem to have because, yeah, if he has experience with it, he has experience with the offense, and that's one less teaching that you got to worry about. And it also helps because, let's face it, it is a business and you have a salary cap and you got to make those hardcore decisions. And one of those hardcore decisions is whether or not you wanted to pay Bozeman. I didn't think it was a lot. They did. They didn't sign him, and off he went elsewhere. That's just the name of the business, game, if you will. And that's where I think for the Ravens, they're like, we already got a guy in-house, and why bother looking elsewhere?
Right, and historically, the Ravens haven't really invested in the position anyway. Like, you can go back to Jeremy Zutaw. That wasn't a huge deal that he signed. And, you have Ryan Jensen on his rookie deal, and then he leaves. It's Skura on a contract that's not huge at all. Then it's McCary for that brief time, not huge contract at all. Then it's Bozeman on the rookie deal. And so it's not like they're investing in the position. Some teams just invest in certain positions and they don't in others. And for the Ravens, it seems like center's one where they feel like they can get quality contributors on cheap contracts. McCary signed that extension, which is a bump up from what he was making, but it's not like he's breaking the bank or anything. And he's a good player. He can play off 5 positions. My one thing would be like if there's an injury and you have to shuffle McCary out of that position when he's playing well and all of a sudden he has to play tackle, where are you going there? But look, you play your best players on the field. And McCary right now is the best center on this roster. And so right at this moment, he should be the starter there. But I really like Treader, but it's okay. We'll move past it. It's the McCary train now here in Baltimore, it feels like. But Harbaugh provided some injury updates on J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Ronnie Stanley, and it feels like the whole approach with them is cautious, which I feel like is the right way to go. You don't want to rush these guys back, especially from injuries. Dobbins and Edwards suffering those ACL injuries, and Stanley with the gruesome ankle. It feels like they're just trying to get him ready for the season. Harbaugh said that Dobbins and Edwards could start the training camp on the PUP list, so there is that to keep in mind. But do you feel like this is the right approach where, you're kind of working on their timelines, waiting for them to feel right? Is that what the Ravens should be doing here? I mean, I think it's a no-brainer.
Oh, God. I mean, the ACL is something that you don't want to mess with. What I mean by that is the healing and the grafting of the tissue back together is one thing, but then the way in which your fast to super fast twitch muscle fibers react around the knee and provide stability and comfort is a totally different ball game. That those peripheral stabilizer, I wouldn't even say stabilize, but those peripheral nerve endings that you're trying to figure out where you're at in space. That to me is paramount. And I'd rather have them be cautious, especially early in the phase of it all, because later in the year you want them to be available, you want them to be up, ready to go and do their thing and the whole nine. Well, being up, available, and ready to do their thing means you can't be pounding on them and overly working them. So it's a delicate scenario. You don't want to rush it.
Yeah, and another thing with the injury landscape that the Ravens went through in 2021 is that Harbaugh talked a bit about how the practices, training camp will be a bit different, that they're working with different methods to try to just decrease the injuries. It was a terrible injury year for this team, and so he talked a bit about there aren't going to be joint practices, and that was something that he kind of made clear. Also, the fact that there might be less one-on-ones and all these different methods they're going to try to use in training camp to prevent injuries and how they're going to practice differently. Do you feel like those methods will pay off in the long run, Q? Is that something where you look at no joint practices and less one-on-ones and say that will help this team stay healthy?
We've had joint practices going way back to when I played. Mother of pearl, it feels like yesterday when I played, but it isn't. We would go against the Kansas City Chiefs all the time. We went against the New Orleans Saints. When I was with the Saints, we went against the Bears. We went against the Denver Broncos. We went against the Dallas Cowboys, plus a full preseason load. The training camp practices for the Baltimore Ravens have traditionally been, under John Harbaugh, strenuous. I remember, talking to some of the guys, some of the players that were active in the early 2000s and such, and their mindset was like, man, one of the reasons why we get off the fast starts is because we have such hard training camps that our body is ready, but then all of a sudden you kind of have this little drop off after around the second, third, fourth week. So yes, on one end of it all, you're hoping that this team can, avoid the injuries and get to the end of the year. Get to the end of the year and not break down, because even if you remember when Lamar went on his historic run, MVP, the whole 9 yards, you had bully ball in full effect. Well, would you have, was it Mark Andrews got hurt? Hayden Hurst was dealing with some banged up stuff. Mark Ingram had sprained I think it was his foot or whatever. And it slowed the train down, way, way down. So it's smart that, at least they're thinking about it and trying to make adjustments. One-on-one definitely is hard on your body. It's necessary for sure. I think in my experiences, you do some one-on-one early on, but then pretty much you just, all right, well, we got it. Okay, off we go. And you got to know your team. You got to know your team. You don't necessarily need to you got to always working hard just for the sake of working hard is not it. Now, here's the elephant in the room that was not addressed that I will keep, banging a drum with. There's a difference between a lifting engine versus a locomotive engine. There's a difference between reverse gear movement and forward movement. Those are two different worlds. One sets you up for injury, the reverse gear, the lifting, the locomotive, and the way in which you need to sprint and run forward and train that into your body is where I think, unfortunately, the Ravens don't have that blueprint down. And so a strong inside ankle bone, a good, strong platform with the foot, and then kind of working your way on up within the movement pattern, that's where you're going to stay durable. That's where you're going to be effective. You're going to literally see the elastic strength increase in your players. You're going to see the durability increase in your players. And the best ability is availability. And that's where I think you can cut out practices, but if you're still going inside ankle bone low, you're putting yourself at risk for an injury.
Yeah, Q knows his stuff, and the Ravens, it'll be interesting to see if they end up changing their training methods. They're obviously taking steps with the things that John Harbaugh did say and announce, and they're actively looking for solutions to not just the 2021 year that really was injury riddled, but this has gone back. 2020, they had their fair share. 2019 was relatively healthy, but we can go back to 2015 where that season was just a mess injury wise. So it's not like it was just 2021 and the rest of the seasons were healthy. The Ravens have dealt with some injuries for multiple seasons now. So hopefully this can be the off season where they find some methods that work for them and they can put the injuries behind them. And obviously this is football. Guys get injured, but not hopefully to the extent that we saw in 2021. But Q, that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for hopping on here on a Thursday, talking football with me. And hopefully next week, Bobby Wagner will be signed and we can talk about where he went. And hopefully that is the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers, cross our eyes, let the light turn off and on. And hopefully that means that's a good sign that Bobby's coming in.
That's right. You heard him. Cross your fingers and cross your eyes, everybody. We're hoping Bobby Wagner comes to Baltimore. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much, Q. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens talk, so be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.